Okay, this is a follow-up to my previous video, and this one's going to be dealing with the claim that is often said, that why didn't the disciples debunk the story? The story of Jesus is really a hoax and made up and a fraud. Why didn't the disciples show it was wrong? Why didn't the disciples tell Paul that he was telling bullshit? Or any of these other things? What is it that it was too early to have been lies, because people would have fixed the story? There were still the eyewitnesses around that would have seen it and said, no, this is wrong. So why didn't the disciples debunk the story if it was truly false? The problem here is that it's assuming that they would have, or that it could have happened. Look at modern times. We have internet. We have video footage of things. We still have people that are completely convinced that Sandy Hook was a government conspiracy. 911 was the United States government attacking itself to start a war in Iraq. The moon landing was a hoax. Mormonism. All these examples of where, even though there is hard evidence against a claim, people still believe the claim. There's still these myths, lies, nonsense that a 2-second Google search can show are wrong, but people still believe them. And this is in modern days, when we have all these means to double check and fix mistakes. 2,000 years ago, it would have been even worse. Let's for instance say that Paul was making nonsense, and that James and the disciples, anybody that knew Jesus, or hell, even Jesus himself, is telling him, you're wrong, you're false, this is bullshit. So what would that have accomplished? It'd be their story versus Paul. And Paul can just claim that they're making stuff up, especially if Paul doesn't show up in Jerusalem, like in his notes. He says that he didn't show up for years. At that point, he had a following elsewhere. The following had grown. So even if Paul himself was debunked, would the people that had already been spread the story to have followed it? If even the disciples themselves said he's making it up, would it have mattered? Because it'd be their word versus Paul, and how would if somebody that trusts Paul and has been following Paul for 10 years know he's telling the truth? You can't use the Gospels, because Gospel stories were much long after. We don't know how much of them was added over the time, how much was actually at the time of the thing. You can't really judge these stories based upon things like that. We see all the time of people making stuff up, and then stuff getting added later. Whereas this whole idea that people back then were more critical, they would have just ignored every single thing that was bullshit. People don't do that nowadays. This is a nonsensical argument. It doesn't make a lick of sense. It ignores history. It ignores what we see in the world nowadays. And this whole idea that the gospel story was too early is based upon a study. Steve Shives mentioned this. It was in a book, and in the book it was claimed that it takes 2 generations for a story change to fact to myth. Unfortunately, what was actually said was for the facts that would debunk it being the true story have vanished. We see it nowadays, like I said. If the whole 911 conspiracy becomes more popular 100 years from now, and all evidence we find is and everybody believes that it was a 911 conspiracy, how easy would it be in 100 years from now to debunk it? That would be the current thought. Right now, it's not the current thought, but if it becomes dominant, it would take forever to debunk it, if even possible. And that's what they're talking about. After a few generations, any evidence that Jesus didn't raise from the dead, Jesus wasn't resurrected, that Paul was a liar, would have vanished or be harder to find. But it doesn't mean that he would have been debunked or anybody would have believed him being debunked or disciples' story being debunked. People are incredulous. People believe when they want to believe, and you see it all the time. We show Christians the evidence that they're wrong about certain things, and they ignore it. So why would the early Christians do the same? Why would they accept contravening evidence? And even some of them did. Most wouldn't. So, I don't know. Give me your thoughts. Rate, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you think of this argument. Both sides. Their argument or my counter argument. I'd like to hear your thoughts.